All right, y'all, come on around up here a little bit.
Irene could probably tell you a little more which one it is. Exactly.
This is the little baby that was buried.
First grave.
The first grave in this cemetery during the Civil War, when they did not know what to do, and they brought her up here on the hill. You see these old cedar trees? Between these two cedar trees, still here, though they're about gone. Now the 17-year-old girl, I believe, is over on this side over here.
Here are the two.
Yeah.
If you look closely, we looked at this earlier today, and you can see that it says Williams, and the last letter of the first name is A, which would probably have been Annetta.
Yeah, Netta.
That's the end.
Is it?
There's a cross here, down here, and up that way.
Well, if she had a middle name, I never heard it. Daddy always said Annetta.
Well, regardless.
That's not important. It's her.
All right, now Jack, where is the grave now? Oh, the man that we think is Ivan. What's his name?
It would have been Evan.
Evan Williams.
Evan Williams. Well, you know, it's,
Oh, that would be this one right here.
no, this
This
his.
Oh no, this is Daddy's mother and daddy.
These over here
He
are the
died.
ones we don't know who are.
Oh.
Okay, it would have been possibly these graves over here.
It
He
would
died
have
in
to be one of them over there.
1890, about 1890.
It would have to be one of them, because I don't know who they are. I mean,
That's
I
a man's grave right here. See there?
don't- you can tell they were
Tell who that
right
is,
here.
but right over there with the
these
tree. You wouldn't tell who that is.
No, I think he's
Do we
Well,
have
you
any
can see
idea
the
when
graves
these
were
died?
done right in here in between these trees.
Okay.
And all this was supposed to have been done during the Civil War. When right down there's a road that goes right straight down the hill here to where the grandmother Williams used to live. And we lived right across the lane, right down there. It's about, I guess maybe 150, 200 yards, right down the hill, at the bottom of the hill. And they came up the hill, and this is what happened here. And this little baby, this little 17-month-old baby was the first grave, the first grave in the cemetery. Now we're looking for Evan Williams.
Now it would be one of them,
From
have to be.
Over here, this other side over here, what she's saying.
Because I don't know anything about them, and I don't know who they are.
Jack, and next time, again, just bring a piece of paper up here.
Well,
with crayon. You can
these
do
are
that.
old.
Grant's got a crayon,
These are old stones.
and I got a piece of paper.
We could mark it and see if we could
I've
tell
got a
what's on
pencil
there.
too.
That's all right. Well, let's don't worry about it right today. We got a lot of stops to do. We'll make it a point to do that.
All right, where's grandmother Williams, great-grandmother Williams buried?
Okay, right here.
Right.
Let's see.
Yeah, this is Grandma Williams.
All right, now what great-granddaddy Williams buried?
Okay, same
Right.
headstone for both of them. They're here.
See, he had one, but then when she died, Uncle
put
Buck and Daddy got
put
a
a double
double
on.
one.
Yeah. Okay. Now where is Aunt Peg buried?
Right over in there.
Willie Phoebus is buried over there too, yeah. Homer Phoebus too, I guess.
No, Homer what?
He wasn't. Where is he buried?
Wiley, Waverly.
Why is that way? Is that right? Well, I guess they just wouldn't bring him out here, would they?
Now I think I'm right about that. No, see, our bill, you know, I believe that's where he is buried up there at Wiley.
Yeah. Okay.
Or he could have been buried where
Who is this right here? Is that the foot of one? Or
That's the foot of that. That
Foot
goes
of that.
with that. They just got a
Oh, they
head.
just got the headstone. This is my great-grandmother Williams now. And great-granddaddy Williams is buried right here.
No, Mother, you're standing right on this grave. It says infant Goodman, Josie Goodman. That's this.
So there's a grave there.
And now this is a Murphy. This is some of the fun.
Right here. That little
What name did you find on that grave?
On what?
This Murphy.
Oh,
That's
Alice.
Oh yeah. Now
Yeah,
this.
well, that was one of the
Yeah.
daughters.
Alice Josephine Murphy.
No, that's what you want to know.
Hey, Alice, isn't it?
Josh, you learned anything today?
That's the
Yeah.
Aunt
Yeah.
That's Aunt Alice. That's the one she called Aunt Alice.
Sister-in-law. Sister.
It was Daddy's sister.
Yeah,
Oh, granddaddy's sister.
that's right. That ain't Alice. See, she had 12 children.
Where was Carl buried? Where was up on Wiley? Wiley.
Okay, she was the one that y'all, the
That's where
first
I
time
was
they
buried.
had.
That's where I know him. I was
records
buried.
of they
Ain't
moved to
North,
Hickman
ain't North buried
County.
up there too.
Is that right? Or
It's
the
got
earliest
to,
record?
it ain't right where Carl's buried. It is
No,
up
I mean,
there,
she
not very
mentioned
far
that
from
right
there.
up.
That's got the record. I think it's what she was.
I didn't know where she was. That's right now.
There's really something, one little grave, a little baby is the thing that started this whole business. And then in 1890 something, Randy William deeded this whole property
Well,
to
see,
the
it
county.
turned out to everybody come up here cause it was free. That it's
Yeah.
wherever they died, they come up here.
But back
And
in
there's
that-
108 Warrens out
But
there.
back in that day, Mother, it was common to have a community cemetery, so
Yeah.
that's not all that it want, right?
Yeah, well, this community, you know, the people were close together back then.
You knew who the other neighbors were, and now you don't.
Society wasn't very mobile, they would just jump in cars and drive somewhere.
Well, I don't even know my next door neighbors, and I mean, people that live right next
Well,
door.
I know who lives down there below me, but I don't ever see them.
Well, I don't know them and don't see them either. I mean, that's the,
You know, that's the sad part. Like you live by yourself, nobody checks to see if you got up.
let's see, what was I going to look for up here?
Let's see, you was gonna look.
I was going to look
What
for
did
some,
he say?
look for somebody.
He was gonna look for something when he got up here.
Look at all those things on the table. – 1917. Where's Hiram?
Right here.
Where's Ronnie?
You don't remember 1970?
Right here, sir.
What?
I forgot 1970.
You forgot 1970? Okay, in 1917, I started here in the first grade. We lived up on the Brady Branch up here, and I walked down here in the first grade. In 1918, then Effie came down in the first grade, I believe. We came down together. We would bring our lunch together, and it'd always be a baked sweet potato and some sorghum molasses with a big wad of butter in it. And the first thing we would do is take that butter out and throw it away. And right over here is where we would eat our lunch. Everybody they didn't have a cafeteria or anything. You had to bring your own lunch. And so we went to school down here for those 2 years. And then in 1919, we moved over here on Pumpkin Creek. We crossed it right over there. You can't see the place here now. You can't get down to it. But we tried yesterday afternoon. We can't get down to it. But it's over on the hill over there next to Pumpkin Creek. We moved over there. It's a Furby place. We call it the mouth of Pumpkin Creek, where it runs into Blue Creek. Moved over there in 1919. That's when Uncle Hiram had died, and you know I told you all that story about him leaving the money and everything. So Hiram was born in 1919. Where is it? Where's Hiram?
Right here.
Right here. You remember that?
No, I don't know.
Well, the reason he was Hiram, see, we used a different doctor that time. We didn't have Dr. Capps. See, Dr. Capps only knew how to bring girls, and we had Dr. Slayton, and he brought a little boy. And man, was I glad, because I had a little brother. Over there, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I had a big beach tree down on Pumpkin Creek there where the water was about, it might have been 2.5, 3 feet deep. I don't know, around that beach tree. But I would fish for hours down there with a little hook and trying to catch those minnows and a little sun perch. And my mother knew where I was all the time because I'd be fishing down there. Well, had my dog. That's when we got Bob from this shawl right over here, right there where you cross the bridge on Pumpkin Creek. That's my old dog Bob, and Bob would come down with me. He wouldn't let anybody bother me at all. I mean, he'd get to show his teeth if anybody came around. And I don't know. That was a bad, kind of a bad year for us. Uncle Jesse died, I told you, and I told you over in back of here about him in Happy Hollow, where Uncle Jesse lived when he died, after being sick 2 weeks with appendicitis. Let's see if I can think of anything else about that place over there. Well, the Simpson family lived across the road from us, Mr. Walter and Miss Annie Simpson, and they had a telephone. And you know, you could stand up there and talk to that thing, and you could talk to people far away on it. I mean, even as far away as Waverly on it. I mean, you know, and talk to them, and talk to somebody, maybe at Buffalo, and just stand there talking to that thing on the wall. And I could not understand that. Telephone. I want to tell you this is a sad story though. I was in the first grade here at Glenwood, or second grade. I was 8 years old. We lived over there. I had my little friends over here, Ivy Buchanan, and some other little friends. I don't remember the names of those, but I remember Ivy. He had a brother that was about, I think he was 9 years old. So one day they came by over there, and they were going to the creek and go swimming. And of course I wanted to go. I had a fit to go. I had to ask my mother, and she said no way. Those kids, Ivy was 8 and boy 9, and there was some about 6 and even smaller. They had 5 of them all together. And I just had a fit because I could not go swimming with those boys. And my little friend was Ivy. He was 8. He drowned. He drowned that afternoon. And they found his body 3 days later, way down on Duck River. And I thought, well, my mother was so wise, not to let me go swimming with those little bitty kids. But I just had a fit to go, and she wouldn't let me go. So I thought I would tell you all that. I can tell you another story about this. This has been, and they still have revivals here. This is a Church of Christ. It's not a Church of Christ school, but they have Church of Christ revivals here. I don't know if they even use this as a school anymore.
No,
They don't, probably don't. All right. But when I went to school here in the 1st and 2nd grade, I went through the 4th grade here. In the 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th, the boys had to gather the wood.
Yeah.
See, we could not, they didn't furnish any wood. They had a pot-bedded stove in there, but we had to furnish the wood, and some of the boys had to take turns about coming in and building a fire in the morning. And that one pot-bedded stove would warm that whole place. And the well was right here where the road is now, and the well would go dry in the summertime. School ran from July until December, with 2 weeks altogether the crops, about the 1st of October. But we would have to go over to this spring over here where you cross the bridge back there and get water out of a spring and bring it over here in a bucket for the school. We had to take turns to do that. Well, a little boy lost his knife. Little boy, I can't think of his name. I could think of it the other day, but I can't even right now. He was one of my friends, lost his knife. He had a Boy Scout knife or something, and I wanted that knife. He lost his knife, and I found it. Well, he went to the teacher and told him he'd lost his knife. Told Parker White he'd lost his knife. And I said, well, I didn't know anything about it. Well, then finally he saw me with the knife. And he said that was his knife. And no, my daddy gave me this knife. So then he goes to the teacher, Parker White, and Parker White has me in there with him, and Parker asked me if that was my knife, and I said it certainly is. My daddy gave it to him. Well, knew then, I was telling a lie about it, so Parker kept on, and the first thing I told him it was it was not my knife. I got a whipping. And that was the first and only whipping I ever got in school. I think I got 14 licks with a switch for that telling that lie. Not for, I told lies what I got the whipping about. Parker White, some of you might know him. He used to be in Waverly. They had a grocery store over there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I made up with my friend. Effie was my friend. She was really, we were partners and friends. I said, now don't tell it at home, because if you do, my mother said if I got a whipping at school, I got one when I got home.
Oh, boy.
And so, Mom, everything is fine. We didn't, nobody said a word. We'd been there about 10 minutes, and Allie and Gartrell ran in. Well, did you tell me you got a whipping at school today? I tell you, I could have bowled her over when she came in, right behind. Effie wouldn't tell it, see, because Effie was my friend. But Allie came in and told it, just blurted it out. I told a lie and got a whipping. I'll tell another little story about this place. I'm talking about the revivals. They mostly had Church of Christ revivals, and the revivals would run from Sunday to the following Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. But every once in a while, they'd have another denomination. And this particular summer, they had the Methodists. They had a revival here. It ran from Sunday until Thursday. And the poor preacher, he preached his heart out, but he couldn't get a single convert. He didn't get a single one. And finally, my mother began to feel sorry for him, and she decided that if he would do it, she was going to be baptized. Because when she was sprinkled over at the Slip-Off Methodist Church, she said she wanted to be immersed. She wanted to be baptized. And so she talked to him, and since he hadn't had a convert all week, I guess he thought it'd be, maybe I'd help him a little bit to baptize somebody. So he said, all right, he would do it. And they announced the baptizing would be at 2 o'clock on that afternoon over here at Blue Creek. Now, Blue Creek is 68 degrees all the time. It's fed by springs, and it's ice cold. You can hardly go swimming over in the summertime. But this is the middle of summer, so they had the revival. Everybody, we met over there. And that's the time we had the fruit tree boys living with us for 2 weeks. They brought us down. Mama was ready for the baptizing. They led her into the water and went through the little ceremony and started to push her under. She said, whoop, whoop, whoop. She grabbed the man around the neck. I thought she was going to drown him, see, because it was so cold. The water was so cold. We laughed about that, I bet, 100 times. And the water was ice cold at 68 degrees, and you get that water, it's pretty doggone chilly. But she really almost drowned that man. He finally got it in the water. Effie and I used to bring our lunch down here. Well, I told y'all about that. We'd have what we'd have, and we'd eat right over there. And I hated it, sorghum molasses and butter. We'd throw the butter away and eat the sorghum molasses. In 1917 now, let me get my years straight. Let me get my years straight here. I started at Waverly it'd be 1990. I started at Waverly in 1920. In 1919, Mr. W.L. Coode was the teacher down here. He lived in Waverly, and we somehow got it made up with him that we'd get a ride with him down here and back for 5 cents a day. So he'd pick up Effie and me, and we'd bring them to school, and we'd go ride back. 5 cents a day. At that time, the World War I had just ended, and President Wilson was having a terrible time with Congress, trying to get his League of Nations passed, trying to settle the thing with the League of Nations. And we talked about it, and I decided, I said, well, I wish I could be president. I'd show him what to do. He said, if you want to be president, you better change to Waverly School. Because we were halfway between Waverly and down here. He said, you better change to Waverly School. And because you get an education. He said, you'll never get an education down in Glenwood. When I would. I wasn't getting one when I was coming down here. So I talked to my mother and dad about it. And then I decided I'd have him talk to him about it. And he did. He told them, said, well, he has possibility. If you would send him to Waverly School, says he has a lot better opportunity than he has down here in Glenwood. Well, he talked to him. Then my mother's always the main one. She had more get up and go about it than my daddy did. And she said, well, I think what do you want to do? And if you want to do it, I said, we'll go. We'll find some way for you to go over there. And I said, I would like to go. I mean, I thought I would like to go. So, so then on the Monday after New Year's Day in 1922, that was 1920 instead of 1922. After New Year's Day, I went to Waverly School. I've told y'all this story, you've heard it, but since we're telling all these things about the family, I'll kind of feed it in here. It'll take about 3 minutes. I was dressed. My mother cut my hair. She gave me a suit bowl. Effie, you know the old suit bowl haircut? You go straight around and shave all down. And had the suit bowl haircut. Had on a little homemade jumper. Had a sweater under it. Had homemade overalls that came to my knees. They used to come down lower, but they'd been washed and drawn up, and they came to my knees. Long stockings and no shoes. And I had on some kind of a cap. I've forgotten what kind. And I started to school. Well, the first day I went to school, didn't know a soul. Getting to school of 240 people, did not know one person nobody. So I walked up to the front door. It was cold, left home at 6 o'clock. Going to school, walked up the front door and told them, they gathered around me like I was a movie star or something. And I told them I wanted to see the teacher, and they carried me to J.A. Gray. He sort of swallowed a time or two when I got in there to see him. And then we talked for a little while. I told him I just finished the 4th grade. He said, you haven't finished the 4th grade. And he said, no. He said, the school here is different to what it is in the country. So he took me into Miss Dolly Ford, the 4th grade teacher, and I saw her kind of grin. I mean, she sort of gulped, and I knew that I was kind of in the wrong place there. Then put me down and said I was in the 4th grade. She took a little information. She taught the 3rd and 4th grades, and so some of you went to her, and you know her, old maid school teacher. So she said, well, you sit over here on my left, and I was sitting in the second seat from the front. And so she said, now we'll start with the 3rd grade arithmetic. And Johnny Durham, do you have your arithmetic, your homework? No, he didn't have it. She said, come out in the hall. And she proceeded to give him a licking. I mean, about 15 licks with a switch because he didn't have his arithmetic. And I thought, well, there I'm sitting, you don't even have an arithmetic book. I knew my time in that seat. And I decided right there that this was not for me. I hid in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we went on, and then the next thing she had was, and why she did this, I don't know, she said at recess, now you remember that you're supposed to have the full name of your best friend. Now, why that was, I don't know why it was. I didn't have a friend, much less a best friend. So I was out in the hall trying to get the name of a best friend. I couldn't get anybody to be my best friend. They all gang around, but nobody to be my best friend. Because I looked like a country hick from way back in the bottoms. I mean, I could have passed for anything. So finally, Tom Morris said he would be my best friend. He said, I'll write my name down for you. He did, and that got me by that. I knew, I got by another switch. I got by that. Then in the afternoon, Miss Dolly gave me a list of things I was supposed to have by 8 o'clock in the morning. And I told her, I said, well, I don't know now. I have to walk all this far, and I might not get here by 8. She said she'd allow me to get there late. So I went home. Effie met me down the road, about 100 yards down the road, and my dog Bob. And she said, how did it go? I said, I ain't a-going back. I ain't a-going back. And so she ran on the front, going in the house, yelling, he ain't a-going back. He ain't a-going back. And my mother said, well, we'll see about that. And I went in, and she said, well, we'll talk about it. She said, let's eat supper now or something, I don't know what it was. When we wash dishes, you help me, and we'll talk about it. So when the time came for dishes to be washed, she said, now you can do what you want to do. Said, if you want to go to Waverly School, said, we'll try to send you to Waverly School. If you want to go back to Glenwood, well, you can go back to Glenwood, but you'll never amount to anything at all. She said, you won't have a chance down there to get an education. Said, now, my mother did not have an education, but she said, if you go to Waverly School, you will have the chance, and it'll be up to you. Well, she talked to me, she says, I believe in you. I believe you can do it. That's where I'm talking to Linda, but I believe you can do it. And I said, well, I'll go this week. She said, go a few more days. So I said, okay, I'll go this week and we'll see how it turns out. But I wanted to be sure to have my lesson. I didn't want to get a whipping. But so the next morning I went over and went down to the bookstore. Tom Miller had the bookstore, and I got my books. She gave me a blank check for him to fill out, and she'd already signed for him to pay for the books. Now I did get there by 8 o'clock barely, so I made it fine that day. But she still didn't call on me. But I began to look through my dictionary. I found out that whatever you wanted to know was in the Webster's Dictionary. I didn't care what it was, you could find it in the Webster's Dictionary. And that was my favorite book. Miss Augusta Finch was the music teacher. She came in on Tuesday, and we were supposed to learn the scale. The do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the scale. Well, I didn't know what a scale, I never heard of a scale, didn't know what she's talking about. But I afterward looked it up in the dictionary, and there it was, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I memorized it. And I would say it over to my dog. I memorized it. But when she had the test in, about 2 weeks later, I made 100 on the test. See, I memorized it out of the dictionary. I memorized the vowels, A-E-I-O, what the vowels and these different things. Everything I could find in that dictionary, I would use it. And it was amazing what you could find in that dictionary. Well, but I went on. And I made it just fine. I'm not going on any further here except to say that by the end of February, the end of March, I came in second in my class. She graded every month. She gets a grade. I was number 2, and in April I was number 1. And I led my class clear on through school then. But now that just shows you what the mother did by encouraging me and telling me that I could do it if it was up to me. And that's what I keep saying to my little friend over here, my sweetheart, Linda, about the test. You can do it. And I know you can do it. I didn't mean to preach a sermon here or anything like that, but I know it can be done because, now my old dog didn't like it much because he went to sleep on me. I'd work on him. I'd memorize, and they would give 50 cents for the best speech on one was I had to memorize the Gettysburg Address, for example, and I got the 50 cents. Not because I was good, but because I wanted to have a dog. And I worked on it, and my old dog would sleep, and I'd sit over to him over and over again, old Bob, and I guess he could say it when I got through, but I got the 50 cents. And I did that all through school. I mean, I could tell you a lot of those tales like that. But what I'm trying to say is, I went to a little country school, but you don't have to do that if you have to get up and go about it. Linda, that's why I keep telling you, I know you can do it. I didn't mean to preach a sermon. Now, maybe. Anybody got a question? Hiram?
Now, Hiram was born where from here?
Over here.
Now, Uncle Jesse was born where over here?
Uncle Jesse was born up on Brady Branch.
Up on Brady Branch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uncle Hiram born over here on where I fished all the time, on the beach street across the creek, across the road from Mr. Walter Anderson, Walter Simpson. Yeah, that's where you're born.
Sure.
You can't get over there now. We tried it
Where y'all
yesterday.
lived when the creek
Well,
got
it-
over the crop.
Can't you go with that to end that little bridge and go up the hill there?
I don't know. I have not been that
Yeah,
way.
over right there from the Miller place there.
We'll try it.
It's
Now, we're running out of time today.
Yeah, but I think we looked up that way to the road.
Well, I don't know where it goes.
It goes on.
It may be a service road for that down that creek. I don't know. See, that bridge was not there.
Yeah.
If we was to we used to have to go across the Blue Creek down here, 50-foot Blue Creek, go across the footlog.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, we'd fall in. It was fun to fall in because either we fell in accidentally or it made the girls laugh when you fall in down there. We'd fall in and going across that bridge down there.
Used to be a good swimming over there too.
Huh?
Good swimming over there.
A good swimming hole there, up there by the bluff.
I know where there's one down on that bridge too.
Yeah, I know. I
It
know where
filled
I
up.
used to. Anybody got a question? Now, we're running out of time, but I want some time for Brady Branch. Y'all getting real tired?
No. I bet you are, though.
Well, I'm all right. I'm going to sleep all the way to Memphis.
Yeah, that running? Who's gonna drive?
Oh, I think we'll let him drive. Be a real. He can tell
Yeah,
us this next time
that's right.
he drove by.
Oh, yes, it was. You had to go up in the woods down here behind a tree. See, the boys go up here behind the trees over here, and the girls Well, I tell you,
They used to have pie suppers here, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody bring pies, and the girls would, you know, and then you'd buy the pies, and you know, they'd auction them off, you know, and run the price up on.
What year did Effie start the way?
the next she started after your age, I did.
And I think John Buck Stewart, he come down here and he bought up 4 or 5 pies, you know. He's 4 deep pies with a girl. But he just bought them up. He said, shoot, I bought these pies. These are mine. He took them home with him.
Well, also I saw my first movie down here. They had announced they're going to have a movie down here. I'd never seen a movie. There'd never been a movie around this territory where at all. There was no movie house in Waverly. So they're going to have a movie, and they're going to show Fatty Arbuckle in the train robbery. Fatty Arbuckle was a comedian, an old fat comedian. And so we came, it cost a dime. It cost 10 cents to see the movie for all of us kids. And what it was, it turned the crank, you know, had a lamp in there or something, and turned the crank, and it would flash that picture on that screen up there. And we'd laugh at that Fatty Arbuckle, that train robbery. And that was really a real experience, you know.
Yeah, they used to have these, you know, these meetings here. You know, that old preacher was hot and get in there, and don't everybody be standing. The old preacher be up there wiping, and preaching everybody to hell.
That's right, I tell you, you're exactly right. Okay, anybody got a question? Now, you've heard something.
Poison ivy did you get when you had to go in the woods? Did you get any poison ivy?
I didn't. No, I used to get chiggers on. Had chiggers on. But this was a real experience.
We need to move on to our
Yeah,
next
we got to
little
move
stop.
on.
Well, you can point that out as we go by. Are you all right?
Listen, I want you to send me a copy of this, will you?
Well, we used to come down the hill and sled down the hill. Talk about a steep hill, and steep. Look, Mr. Walter Simpson, farmer's land in here. We live right over there. That's where we live, right over there.
You know, he was my great uncle, but I don't remember
Is
him.
that right? Boy, they were really a fine couple. We have lived with some fine people, you know, and I was thinking the other day about the people who live around and been fine people.
You know, I didn't know Susan until I called her out in Missouri and talked to her about it, you know, a few months ago. I did not.
Cloud that field or anything. Yeah, we used to have to wade across. I had to go this creek down here. You can walk across and put along the way to fall in or whatever. And when it rained, Uncle Ted would have Dave or Robert one bring a wagon down here with meat. And we would. You sure can get across those two.
Mm.
See if your waves thank you.
Mhm.
Now up there's the bluff, and that used to be a real good swimming hole.
That is the coldest water in the country
It
right
sure
there.
is. I'll tell you right now, it's 68 degrees.
We'd go and swim in Blue Creek and you would absolutely turn blue. It gets so cold. Right, you might want to mention right here, to,
That's where
you know,
Uncle Ted
where Uncle
lived,
Ted
yeah.
lived. Just
Uncle Ted lived right up on the hill. This is the Glenwood Methodist Church. It was not here at that time. Uncle Ted lived up right on the hill. They had a large family of children. I don't remember this exactly how many, but there was a large family here. And my Aunt Nora and my grandmother Smith lived right down here where that thing runs into the creek right down there. And Nora had a little baby that died. He's buried over in the Knight Cemetery. This is the John Smith home. He's John Duke or John Smith, whatever it is. It used to be, at one time, it was the John Crown home. it Carl?
Mhm.
I guess it means
He's home, yeah, baby.
you have a fit to see him.
There's a car.
All this used to be farmland, no, not be farm part of it, right?
It sure is swampy now.
It sure is. You've also used to be farmland over here. Just one bit. As a matter of fact, when I was here, I farmed all right now. Either from myself or from somebody else, you know. But I made good money, made 50 cents a day, and then I finally got to 75 cents a day when I got growing this time. Couldn't collect it though. You worked for Wilson Miller. And he made his money out of logging. If he didn't make his money, then he wouldn't pay you. So and this is where the Bristentines live right here. We rented that land right there. No houses or anything on it. But when I walked down to Glenwood School, this was not a paved road, this is a dirt road, and the lee of the bushes that meet in the middle of the road almost. And snakes, there's always snakes. No houses, none of these houses over here. I don't know, can we get, now this is the John Fields place right
You
here.
see the rock there?
Yeah.
That's called Odd Rock.
See if we can find a place here now. This John Fields place, where
We're on up a little further, isn't it? Up here
they? Yeah.
closer.
No. Is that it right?
Wasn't it up here? I
Yeah.
don't remember. I was thinking it was on up here. You may, don't let me get you steered wrong. I was just, because I
Well, is this yours? Where we go?
No. We're still not to the forks yet.
Well, we don't want to go to the forest before we get to the
Yeah.
forest.
No, it's just right up here.
Yeah,
we're
right
not
up
we're
here.
not quite to it yet.
We're lost. Well, look at those maple trees up the
Mhm.
street. Cunningham used to be right here. We need to go on up and pay out, maybe.
You gonna go on
past?
past?
Put down the marker for Uncle Hiram on June the 20th back at the Walker Cemetery.
Yeah.
All right, this is it right here. Right down there is where my grandmother Smith lived. Is that house is not, it's burned and there's a new house there.
Yeah.
That's where it was. But all this farm here was where grandmother, we were living at that time. This is where the farm was. And Uncle Hiram, Uncle Jesse, and my grandmother, my mother and daddy, and myself. All right. And of course, Brady Branch came right along over
Yeah.
there.
Watch
This-
the truck behind.
This road was not here. This road was not here. None of these roads were here. The roads were up on the old road up on the hill up there. None of these roads were here. We had land, or they had land. My daddy had this land cultivated right here. And peanuts. And I told you about the peanuts. We held for the price to go up and the price went down. And of course Uncle Hiram, right down here is where that I told you about my grandmother doing the laundry and where he told me I was his best, the right-hand man and
Yeah.
to take care.
Yeah.
And he turned and walked up the road and we never saw him again.
Yeah.
Now this is where it all happened. They farmed over here and also there's about this much land across on the other side of the farm. I want to tell you all another story. You're going to turn here. I'll tell you all another story that involves. Now the last place we're going to stop is about a half a mile up there. It's right close. This is Brady Branch. Right here, it was a place where the Brady Branch went down by this farm. Colonel Napier of Waverly, Tennessee, and this is during the Civil War, had a cavalry unit. He was attached to Forrest Cavalry Unit, but he had captured 2 barges down on the Tennessee River at the mouth of Duck River. And in the capture, they had this had two little pots of some kind of pot, size pots, iron pots of gold. All right, they camped right here overnight. Colonel Napier took his, now we know these are the facts. I mean, these are the known facts about it. Colonel Napier took his aide, and they left that camping down there. Took the money, and they buried it. Now, where did they bury it? All right, there's several theories about that. They could have come up the old road up there. They could have buried it up here. There's a beech tree up here that's almost dug up. I bet it just looked like a tornado's hit it because it's dug all around. There used to be a beech tree. Also, there was an oak tree up here, up on the hill over there, with a 60-penny nail in it. Just dug up. I mean, it just dug all around. Now, nobody knows about the money. Now, we know. My daddy says that he was sure that Mr. Crowell got the money. But Mr. Crowell was 10 years old when the Civil War was going on, and he knew they were camping down here, and he knew that they were Federals, and he knew. He's just a boy.
Yeah.
But see, the later years, then they got to looking for the money. And they found that tree with a 60-penny nail in it, and he dug it, and we believe that he got the money. But I want to tell you all that story. So I thought that might be a little interesting. I dug for that money all the time we lived there. Digging post holes and everything, looking for that money. But I told Ronnie if the leaves are off, I can show you the tree that's got the nail in it. But that's a pretty good sign. And since Colonel Napier was from Waverly, he lived in Waverly. He knew pretty well what this country was out here. And but he was killed 2 days later. He was killed 2 days later. The forest forces at Crossroads down in West Tennessee. So I thought I would tell you all that story. But I want to tell you about Uncle Hiram. This is where it was when he went to the service. And I told you all that story back in July. Okay.
Okay, we need to.
Any questions? We're coming to the last one now. Watch out. You better not go over there. You're trespassing. When y'all get ready, I'll start in.
Okay, just a minute. Uncle Hiram never coming over this way.
See, that's the old well right over yonder.
What?
The well was right over yonder. The house right over here is the well. Right the well where we used to get that water out of the well.
I swear I wish he wouldn't do that.
Which one?
He is determined.
Mr. Will had the granddaddy?
Over the well.
Oh, here, I think it's over here. I little bit to make the day.
Yeah, it does.
Y'all ready?
Our house used to be out there where the trees got back in
Tell them
here.
to come on up closer.
And the well was
Russell,
right
y'all,
over here.
Come on.
You want a chair?
No, he
a
wants
little
to come up
closer. Come on
closer.
up a little closer.
Oh,
That's okay.
well, I don't face the sun. Come over here. You're not in the sun over
Then
here.
let it get on this side over
Oh,
here.
you're there. Right there. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that tree over here.
Magnolia.
Magnolia. Okay, y'all. Are you ready?
Anytime.
Okay.
Okay,
Roll
this is our final stop. And I'm not going to belabor it too long. I could stay here for a long time. But we'll talk for a little while about it. We moved here on the 1st of January, and possibly the 2nd day of January, 1920. We moved here from back on the Furby place over there where Hiram was born. down the mouth of Pumpkin Creek. We moved here. We had bought this place. My daddy had bought it. And we moved here. We moved our belongings in a wagon, Uncle Ted's wagon, one just a 2-horse wagon with a couple of mules and a wagon. We put everything we had, our household effects, and I think we had a few chickens in the coop, and we had a cow behind. Moved everything we had up here. On the 2nd day of January, 1920. Well, the first thing I did when we moved here, I'd held the axe in my hand. Oh, I brought the axe in my hand all the way when I ride in the wagon standing up, holding the axe. I jumped out of the wagon. I looked around, surveyed everywhere to see if there were any Indians around. Then I began to chop on a tree. You know, the real pioneers, going to work right quick. And I didn't realize how much chopping I was going to have to do in the years to come. Because we had this fireplace. The house, the house had been used by some timber cutters. People who were cutting logs, Sugar Miller, and I've forgotten who else. But it was a house with these boards on the side. 3-room house, there again, with 2 rooms and a kitchen. Had a big fireplace at one end. That fireplace was just about that wide for the wood part. And I didn't realize that thing could burn up more wood than you could cut. And it was like that. It'd get cold weather, you couldn't keep a thing in wood. Effie knows about that. So that's the first thing I did was start to cut wood. And we began to gather up wood. It was cold, the wind was out of the north. This is the coldest place in the world when the wind's blowing. Where's you all? You all verify that. When it blows, when the wind blows, it is really cold. So, but we built a fire in the fireplace and without all that scrap wood and stuff, got the house kind of warm. Honestly, you could see cracks in the wall. You could see daylight through those cracks. I don't know when we ever got that place warm because it had cracks in the wall and you could see light through those walls. I don't know why the place didn't burn down. The fireplace was like a great big fireplace, and out the top when you fool with the fire, the sparks would come out and fly in all directions. Just breathe, a lot of sparks would fly out. And I thought sure the house was going to burn down, but we didn't. Somehow we didn't. But that was the first day we moved here. There was nothing fenced in. It was just the house and the well. Now the well was a real good well, and Yule tells me it's still good. The well was a deep well. It's connected with the Duck River. It has on the same ground level, water level as Duck River. And when the river rises, when it rains and the river rises, the well rises too. And when it gets dry weather, it will go down. Well, that first year we were here, we tried to make a garden. My daddy bought a pair of scratchers. Now, you all knows what they are. Yeah. It's a 5-prong, flexible plow. Yeah. And you plow that thing, and plow the garden with it. We didn't have a fence around it. We finally put a fence around it because the cows, somehow this was a meeting place for the cows. The cows were not fenced in anywhere. And at nighttime there'd be 40 or 50 of them down here. And it was always my job to clean up after the cows in the morning and throw that over in the garden. We didn't throw away anything. We saved everything. And I'd have to do that. Well, the first summer we were here, of course, this road was not, there were no roads up there. It was all woods. This is woods on both sides of it. That road right over there, that was the number 70 highway, the Broadway of America coming out of Memphis. That was a dirt road, a dirt and gravel road. And the bridge was not built across the Tennessee River. You had to ferry down there. But that summer there was a tremendous amount of traffic on that road. But they were covered wagons. Covered wagons with people going west. You could sometimes see them one right after the other going west. Where a large family may have 2 or 3. But they'd have most of their belongings, and sometimes they'd have them tied on, and sometimes they'd have children, in those wagons. Well, right across over here, you see over there where that house right along in there, that was a good camping spot. And every night, almost every night, we would have somebody camping, or these people moving toward the west. And that was real interesting to me as a little boy, 5 years old. I could talk to those boys. And they were coming from North Carolina and from different places going west. We would sell them and give them stuff. We had a garden. I had to plow the garden. And the first thing my mother did was to buy 50 little chickens. I think she paid maybe 3 cents a piece for them. They were Plymouth Rock, and we had Plymouth Rock when I left home 19 years later. She raised Plymouth Rock chickens all the time. She got those 50, and then she'd get 50 more. We would give, if a poor family came by, we'd give them eggs or give them stuff out of the garden. But now that happened for a number of summers. I would say it happened for at least 4 or 5 summers. That there was a heavy movement of traffic. This was the main highway between Bristol and Memphis. And even though it was just an old dirt road over there, a dirt and gravel road, there were just umpteen of those wagons, those big wagons. And I saw a few ox carts where they were going, where they were tended by oxen going down early. So I thought that might be interesting to you. We began to work on the place. The first spring we were here, Uncle Tad, who was really he was good to us, real good to us. Uncle Tad lived right down between here and Blue Creek. Organized what they call a neighborhood working. They had about 30 men come in here. Uncle Tad had 3. The Millers had some. The Buchanans had some. The different ones. We had about 30 people. And what they did, they brought in the tools, they brought in the teams, and they cleared the land back here. They cleared, I would say, about 2 acres now. I don't know if that was more, maybe that was not that much. But what they did was cut what they call clear cut. They cut the stuff to the ground. Everything was down there. They took those teams and dragged the stuff over here by the creek. And they piled it along this side of the road. We did not have a fence over there. We had all that conglomeration of stuff that they had cut down. And I guess maybe it'd taken half a train to carry the stuff that they cut down that way. So they decided that they would lay it off and plant it in corn. Didn't pretend to break it up. It was just solid roots and rocks. You couldn't put a plow in there at all. So they took this, what they call a bull tongue, and kind of halfway laid it off, and they took a corn planter and they planted that thing in corn. Well, it worked fine. Boy, it looked real good. It had all cleared off in corn. But when the weeds came up and the bushes came up, you couldn't find the corn. I mean, there was so much weeds in there. And my daddy bought these cane hoes. Where's Effie? Is Effie around here? Effie and Hiram. You know what a cane hoe is? It's a hole. It's possibly 4 by, I'd say about 4 by 8. Maybe you don't know what one is. It's made out of heavy steel. It's real heavy. It's at least 3 times as heavy as a regular hoe. And so he bought 6 of those things, and we wore them out. Not that year, but we used those hoes every year on this corn. And every year we'd have more land cleared up. And we'd chop out those weeds and bushes out of that corn when you couldn't find the corn until you chopped them out. And we hated that. I hated to do that corn chopping worse than anything. My daddy bought this old scratcher plow, and I'd have to plow the corn with scratchers, and then we'd go out and hoe the corn. But Hiram, at that time, was coming along. By the time he got to be 6 years old, Hiram had his cane hoe, and he'd work on that with us. But Hiram had trouble with the chills. I don't know if Hiram remembers this or not, but one day we were hoeing corn down there, and Hiram had a chill. He went to the house, and my dad sent him back down there because he sent him back, but he didn't believe me. Well, he had the second chill. He had 2 chills and a half a day, and my daddy gave him a whipping and sent him back down there again. I think that cured your chills, Hiram. You remember that? You remember that? I think that possibly cured his chills. Another thing happened, and I was ashamed of this after I did it. But everybody was working. My mother was working. My daddy, even when my daddy was 2/3 blind, he still worked all the time. If he knows how, he worked as much as any of us. Well, when my mother came, we had these onions in the garden, and my mother came in, and we were going to bed, and she said, Lord, said, I have never been as tired in my life. Said, I just don't know if I can make it or not. Went to bed. I had put this onion in her bed. It had curled up. It had grown, curled up like a snake. I mean, you know how they do, how they grow up. I had forgotten about the thing. I put that in her bed, and she put her, she's tired. And she came out of there, she jumped about 2 feet high, and said, Lord, there's a snake in the bed. And I tried to tell her that I had done that, but she gave me a whipping before I could tell her what to do. And I felt real bad because she was so tired, she could hardly move. But we had more snakes around there. See, they cut this timber, and these snakes would travel. They killed 13 rattlesnakes between here and down that corner where I showed the corner that year. We didn't do it. Other people did it. The dog, old Bob, wouldn't fight a rattlesnake. He would fight any kind of snake except a rattlesnake, but he wouldn't fight a rattlesnake. But they killed 13 rattlesnakes down through here. And I was deathly afraid of snakes. We killed snakes in the yard. Killed a chicken snake in one of these trees, one of these old trees over here. He's up in the tree, and hanging down about 3 feet. Old chicken snake. And we kept, my daddy kept martins to try to drive away the bats, the hawks, and he said it might drive the snakes away too. I don't know if it did or not. But we kept martins here all the time. But that year we had just absolutely, I would dare say, hundreds of snakes because you'd kill them every day. You'd kill them in the yard, you'd kill them in the barn. And my mother's always afraid to go out to the chicken house because there'd be a chicken snake in the chicken house out there. And so we became deathly afraid of snakes. Well, we went on. Time went by, and we cleared more land. Every year we cleared more land. And more stumps and more rocks. I hated the rocks and the stumps. And I'm glad to see the Yules got them all out. I don't think he had any at all. I may not have any stumps, but some rocks I expect. But we lived here. We grew up. Oh, I don't know. We had a lot of fun though as kids. And Aunt Nora moved up the road here from us with grandmother, and she had children, Allie and Cecil and Louise, and James, and James was a baby though, but they played. There's a great big sawdust pile right up here at the mouth of Mill Holler. That thing was about 8 feet deep, and that thing was easily, I would say about 75 yards long, and maybe 50 yards wide, but a great big sawdust pile. Because when they cut all this stuff, they cut it into lumber, see? And that's where the mill was up there. That's why they call it Mill Holler. So we would go up there and we'd dig tunnels in that sawdust, Effie knows that, and we'd run and turn somersaults in it, we'd do all these things. And we had a good time this year. We grew up, and it was good for us. The first year that we were here, though, my daddy and I went down to the lower end of this field and we got 4 maple trees. And I believe that maybe one of them...
No, they're back behind you.
They're back behind. Anyway, they're still here. There are 2 of them still here. We put those maple trees out, and they grew, and they have always been beautiful in the fall, and we sure were proud of it. We put out, that same year, we put out these 32 fruit trees that fall. We put them out in February. They were never overcross. We had to clean up. There was a great big briar patch across the creek over here. And we had to clean that thing out to put those fruit trees down. And every year we'd have a watermelon patch over there. We'd raise watermelons and cues and cantaloupes and all different kinds. We had fruit over there and all kind of things. And I would sell it. I mean, I'd have my fruit stand out here. And one year I sold $40 worth of watermelons and fruit and stuff out of that place over there to people who were coming along. And I sold a watermelon that must have weighed 40 pounds for a quarter. A quarter's most I ever got for one. I mean, the biggest one. And most of them were 10, 15 cents maybe. You sell a cantaloupe for a nickel, a cue for a nickel. You know what a cue is? That's just a long cantaloupe. Selling for a nickel. And I made $40 one summer out of that. As we grew older, we liked to go hunting. I'd like to make money any way I could. Hiram was the best rugby professional hunter. One time he was up milling all over. Hiram, were you on milling all over here? And who else got after you? You remember that? I don't know if he wants me to tell that.
Wildcat.
The Wildcat.
That's possible.
Well, who else got after Ronnie? Hiram went up the hall and got the possum. And who else got after him? And then he said, who are you? He told him his name, but they still kept after him. He came home in a run because that was all he knew. They ready home. Another time I went hunting up there. I'm telling you all these crazy little things. Old Bob was a good hunting dog. He treated a possum in the ground. Well, if you treat them in the ground, usually it was a root hole, and it would be real shallow. So I got to crawling around this root hole, and there was a skunk in there. And that skunk came out with the possum, and boy, he was spraying in all directions. He sprayed all over the dog, he sprayed all over me, and the dog began to plow the leaves. He plowed the leaves about 50 feet down through there. And I came home, and they could smell me. I got with 100 yards of the house up here. I said, that skunk, it sprayed all over me. My mother, never forget, she burned my clothes and it still smelled. I couldn't get rid of that thing. I don't know when I got rid of that smell on that darn skunk, but that was funny. Another time I'll tell this story on my pal Effie. Effie was always my pal. Effie was a good rabbit hunter. Old Bob got to chasing this rabbit around on this hill over here. You know, when you chase a rabbit, he'll always run in a circle. You know how they do. They run around in a circle. Effie was over there, and of course she didn't have a gun or anything. But here comes that rabbit just lumbering along, and Bob was, because he was barking and hollering. And the rabbit came right toward Effie, and she squatted down. And you know she caught that rabbit between her legs? Now that's the honest to goodness truth. Isn't that right? She caught that rabbit between her legs. So I never knew if a rabbit hunter could outdo that job. Well, all this crazy stuff. I know y'all are tired, but I'll tell you one more too. Our neighbor was Mr. and Miss Crowell up here. We had fine neighbors. Wherever we lived, we had fine neighbors. We had Mr. and Miss Simpson over there on Pumpkin Creek, and we had Mr. and Miss Crowell. The only thing about, they were both real old. And like I told you, Mr. Crowell was 10 years old when the Civil War was fought, and they camped down here. He would tell me this Civil War story. He was kind of my hero. Them Yankees come right down Mill Hall. They had 1,000 of them, you know, with the horses and the wagons and the big old guns on the way. Man, alive, I'd listen to that stuff. And he's the one talking about them burning all the houses and burning the farm. That's when they were going to Shiloh before the Battle of Shiloh. So, when I was about 11 or 12, something like that, the thing about the Crowells, Ms. Crowell was deaf. She could not hear a thing. You had to put your arm on her shoulder up to her face and say, hey, and well, you know, as loud as you could, and she'd kind of, I think the vibration somehow, she'd understand what you said. Well, Mr. Crowell hired me. He wanted me to help him pick up rocks or something over there. And of course I had plenty of rocks to pick up down here. But he wanted me to help him out. And on the farm, you'll know, and I know, that a day is from sun up to sundown. I mean, you're going to, when that sun comes up, and you're going when the sun goes down with a time for lunch. And that's what I did. I worked for Mr. Crowell that day. and he paid me 50 cents. Well, Miss Crowell didn't like it. And the whole thing is because they sat on the porch, and he would talk to her, they'd argue. They'd get almost into a fight, and you could hear every word that he said. You couldn't hear what she said, but you knew what she said because you could tell what he said. And she told him that 35 cents would have been plenty, see, for me working all day. And finally, they kept on arguing about it, and he said, well, damn it, Ferris, says, I gave him $50. I know he wasn't worth $50, but I gave him $50. And you could hear every word he said. We used to listen to them, and you could hear, it was better than a show. You could hear every word of it.
He had an old mule.
Old mule named Lena.
Ada.
Was it Ada?
Ada.
Well, he had one first named
Well,
Lena.
the last thing he had is Ada. We used to hide this ditch over here. He'd come down through there and talk to boy Ada and cuss her, you know.
He used every
that ditch, just listen at him.
he couldn't say 3 words without using cuss
He'd
words.
cuss old Ada.
But the time it got him, Mr. Crowell would get a haircut and a shave once a year in April. I don't care. I mean, that was the only time. He'd take a bath and get a shave and a haircut in April. And of course, he made a good Santa Claus at Christmas time because he always wished it. But old Lena, he did this time, and old Lena didn't recognize it. She wouldn't have, his old horse wouldn't have anything to do with him because he thought he was a stranger. Had his haircut. You wouldn't know him. He had his haircut and got a shave and took a bath in April. I don't know. These old tales, I got a lot of them. But everybody's tired. We've had a good day.
I think you did tell one more. You've told one on everybody but Annie now.
Well, I'll tell one on Annie. Y'all want to hear one? Annie was 7 years old. Miss Crowell dipped snuff.
Yeah.
And Miss Crowell was a real nice, she's a fine lady. She just couldn't hear. And she dipped snuff. And she came down here on a Saturday afternoon. And she would always bring bakery stuff. She'd bring bread or she'd bake a pie or something. She'd bring it down to us. And Annie was 7 years old. And while she was here, Annie decided to get into that snuff. She thought she'd start dipping snuff like this Crowell did, see? And it made her deaf and sick. She thought she'd gonna die. Well, when Miss Crowell got ready to go home, she couldn't find her snuff. And Annie was out in the back out there. Couldn't get up because of the darn snuff. She said she had never been sick and before or since as she was then. Well, Miss Crowell went on home. She couldn't find her snuff. And my mother discovered Annie out there sick, and she knew what had happened. And she made Annie confess. So she made Annie go up there and tell Miss Crowell that she'd gotten into her snuff. And Annie told her that she sure was sorry she got into it. But that was the only time, that's the first and last time that she started dipping snuff. I don't know. They had a lot of old tales to tell about. We kids, we'd go up in Mr. Crowell's field up there. Effie would get his peaches. Is that right?
He was stealing his chestnuts too.
Yeah.
He'd rake all the leaves.
He'd rake all the leaves off. We had a lot of chestnut
On
trees.
the rail fence, we'd get up on that rail fence. We wouldn't see us with the big chestnut tree.
He'd break the leaves off so the chestnuts fall in the bare ground, see. And we'd beat him up and get the chestnuts, see. And there were just dozens of little chestnut trees around here. I'd take them to school and swap them for cheese and crackers and stuff like that. But this was a wonderful place to live.
Jack, you remember, hey Jack, remember that picture of all these kids on
That old steam engine? Yeah.
Right up there.
Why?
Kind of behind the rail, just right over there.
I'll tell y'all one more. I know y'all get tired. I'm tired too. But when I was about 12, thereabouts, somehow I got hold of an old buggy chassis. And the thing the wheels were bad. So I took that thing and I wired up those wheels as good as I could. I took some boards and put a little body on it. And I think the boards just laying. I had them so that I put a nail so they wouldn't slip. Put a little buffer up there so they wouldn't slip back and forth. That old buggy, and it didn't have any brakes, didn't have anything at all. I took a rope and put it so I could guide it, and had a little board across it so I had a place to sit. So I gathered up all the kids, Effie and Annie and Hiram, and I think Jesse was too little at that time. Aline, Louise, and Cecil, and we went up there. And we pushed that thing to the top of Cooley Hill, a mile and a half up the road up here, to the top of the hill, up on the road. We got on, and I realized before we had gone 100 yards that we'd made a mistake. You couldn't have no way of slowing that thing down, and the further you'd go, the faster it would get. And I had a load of kids on there. And we strode kids from the top of Cooley Hill, and I tell you, they'd fall off. Those boards would come off in the road up there. And if we'd have met somebody, I don't know what in the world I would have done, because there was no way to stop that thing. It just rolled it. And it kept getting faster and faster and faster. And you know, we rolled that thing down to right over here. And Cecil and I were the only two left on it. And we dragged our feet for at least 100 feet or more, dragged them out in the gravel to stop that thing. We couldn't get it stopped. That's what I call a wild buggy ride. It was really a wild one. You remember that, Hiram? Yeah. If you remember it.
When he was growing up too, I think he did it in faster.
All right, if y'all enjoyed these little tales,
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, wonderful.
we got them recorded. Of course, you don't have it, that'll be on the videotape. But this was a wonderful place to live, and I know that you'll verify that to me too. It's been a wonderful place. I dug for the money. I dug all those years, but I never could find it.
Yeah.
And I dreamed about it. Mr. Crown got the money.
Yeah.
We know he got it because my daddy said that he sent it to Missouri, and his boy out there would get it changed into bills and send it back to me. My daddy said he kept it in his orchard, in a hollow tree up, the hollow apple tree up there in his orchard. Mr. Crowell, he had no livelihood. We don't know how they ever made a living. They raised five children, maybe 7 children, 5 or 7 children, and without any livelihood. So that he got the money, and there was two pots of gold. I don't have any idea how much, but I dug for it. And every time we'd put in a fence, I'd always watch for that money, hoping it hit that fence post to hit that money.
You know, he and Miss Ferris are buried. You know where Uncle Tad's place is?
Yeah, I know
Up
it.
that creek.
Unmarked grave. I know that. Mr. and Ms. Crowell died, and the family, they finally went to the county home over
County
here.
Poorhouse.
And county, what we call the poorhouse, and they died over there, and they are buried in unmarked graves down here on Blue Creek Road.
Yeah.
Now there's some other people buried, some of their families buried down there too. The graves are unmarked. So and I thought that was a shame because they raised those kids,
Yeah.
and they were still buried in unmarked graves. Now, they died in the county farm, what we call the poorhouse over here on Lower Trace Creek. I've told y'all a lot today, and I know you're worn out.
I know you are too.
But you don't know how I appreciate you.
We
Come
Really
in.
enjoy it. We appreciate you.
What a joy it's been to me
Gosh,
to
it-
tell you all this
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
because, now here's the reason. Jack and I have worked for 12 years trying to get all this family mess together.
Yeah,
And this jigsaw puzzle, we keep finding a little piece at a time.
yeah.
And we keep putting it together, and we have it pretty well together. But and Jack has done such a wonderful job on
Yeah.
the research.
Yeah.
Let's give him a big, how about give him a big hand? Such a wonderful job on it.
It's been a pleasure, no more.
And
than
we're
anything
gonna
else. It's been-
continue on it too. Next spring, like I say, maybe we can make a tour of Hickman County, where the Flowers people live, and where that the Deans live, and we may even know more about Perry County. We're going to try to get a map of Perry County, like, and we might know more about Perry County too. And the Deans were not wealthy people. My grandpa Dean was in the Civil War. He was in the Battle of Fishville, Kentucky, and captured there and sent to Illinois.
Fishing Creek.
Fishing Creek, Kentucky. He sent to Illinois as a war prisoner. He got in a fight in prison up there, and he broke his arm. He was further injured. But anyway, he was up there until the end of the war, and he came back over here at Buffalo. And like I say, my mother was born in Logan Hollow. He filed a formal request for a Confederate pension. Our grandfather now, who had been in the Civil War and wounded. And at that time, he made cane-bottom chairs. He made some baskets, I believe, a little weaving. He had a little garden. And grandmother lived there too. His total net worth at that time, we found out later, they turned it down. because his net worth was $25.
Oh.
His net worth was $25. They turned him down. Now finally, some years later, he filed again, got one. They gave him $9 a month. So he had a pension of $9 a month. So they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't. That's what I tell y'all. I got all kinds of.
At one time before, while this was going on, everything he had was sold by the sheriff over there to pay taxes or whatever. He wound up with nothing. He had nothing.
Well, y'all be careful.
I guess we
going
better
home. It's 4:30.
Well, it's good seeing all of you.